To me, it doesn't matter what your politics are. I don't care who you voted for. How could you not get behind this press conference from RFK Jr. yesterday, Health and Human Services Director, when he said, we need to start taking this autism stuff more seriously. We got to figure out what's going on. And I am going to have the best of the best on the case moving forward. Here he was yesterday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., talking about what his plan is going forward and some of the numbers that are out there and how they've changed in recent decades.
The ASD prevalence rate in 8-year-olds is now 1 in 31. Shocking. There's an extreme risk for boys. Overall, the risk for boys of getting an autism diagnosis in this country is now 1 in 20. And as high in California, which has the best data collection. So it probably also reflects the national trend, 1 in 12.5 boys. This is part of an unrelenting upward trend. The prevalence 2 years ago was 1 in 36. Since the first ADDM report in 1990, which was 1992 births, autism has increased by a factor of 4.8. That's 480%, I believe.
He's right about that. It is. Now, there's no doubt, it seems like, of course, being able to diagnose something is obviously going to lead to an increase, but not at these numbers. Not, 1 in 20 boys, 1 in 31 8-year-olds, obviously more prevalent in boys than in girls as well. That doesn't make up. It just doesn't make sense. That does not make up for what has been a rapid increase in autism over the last especially 30, 40 years. So he announced that he is going to push for this. He has declared autism a rapidly growing epidemic in the U.S. and vowed to identify what exactly is going on and what is to blame. And he noted, just to repeat these numbers, it has increased from 1 in 36 children in 2020 to 1 in 31 in 2022. So you're seeing that increase not just over the last 30, 40 years, but you're even seeing things expedite over the last few years. Now, what do you do with this? Because I know people are going to say, RFK, he's a quack. He's going to try to find one single vaccine to blame. My hope is that he doesn't have a conclusion that he's trying to find a roundabout answer to. If that's your concern, I agree with you. I don't want that here. I don't. I want an honest, independent study with the best doctors in the country looking into this and trying to figure out why. It's obviously a complex deal. It's not a one-size-fits-all diagnosis, and the origins are multifaceted. You can't blame one thing for this. But if they're going to do this study, and I'm glad that he is going to do this study and do this homework and this research, well, it's got to be across the board, looking at everything and anything, not just trying to find the answer that some people may want to politically achieve. Nicole Saphier, you see her on Fox News once in a while. She wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, opinion piece, and she notes here, raising awareness is only the first step. Turning that awareness into evidence-based action is what matters. If Mr. Kennedy truly wants to be a champion for families facing autism spectrum disorder, he should form partnerships with the nation's most reputable researchers, support studies that look beyond easy answers, and resist the temptation to oversimplify a complex disorder. He should also steer away from emotionally charged rhetoric that the industry has engaged in a cover-up. Science is a process of discovery, not confirmation. That right there, that is a great line. You see, that's what happened during COVID. People wanted to confirm something, and they allowed their science to be based on what they wanted to be true. Don't make the same mistake that you criticize other people for making during COVID. If you want the answer to be X, don't just try to backtrack from what you want the answer to be on this stuff. Do a true independent health study. And if RFK can oversee that, if he can lead that, if he can do it in a highly transparent way, that would be a huge win for all Americans. Left, right, Republican, Democrat, Independent, doesn't matter. That would be a great win for American families because no one really knows the answer, right? I mean, people want to point to a vaccine. People want to point to what we consume. People want to point to screens. They want to say, hey, we also know that women are having babies later in life. That could be a contributing factor in some cases. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not one thing. So I'm optimistic. Maybe I'm being optimistic because these are my guys. I'll readily admit I have a bias there. Maybe that's why I'm being optimistic. But I'm optimistic because no one's had any answers on this, and frankly, no one's really wanted to talk about it, John.
There you go, exactly. And I don't know that we would have the answer in 4 years by the time he's no longer the secretary, right? So the point is that we're getting at least started, just like Doge. We're starting somewhere, and it's, about time.
And I'm glad it is. And I hope, I know that we are so divided politically, but how could you not want to sit there and say, this is worth our time. This is worth our investment. And yeah, fine. I didn't vote for Trump. I might hate everything that he's doing, but sure, I'm in on this one. Now, tomorrow, our feature Friday guest at 9 o'clock for a half hour in studio is going to be Dr. Christine White of Freedom Pediatrics here in town. She's been on the show before, but we're going to talk to her about this and also about the topic we hit on heavily a couple of days ago, and that is the way that the ADHD diagnosis is getting totally out of control. And they are just giving kids, mostly boys, these pills, basically giving them speed to try to calm them down in the classroom for 8 hours. And there was a huge New York Times piece on Sunday. It was like 5,000 words. I don't know. It took forever to read the thing. But it was a huge feature piece in the New York Times on Sunday. And it basically was the New York Times admitting that we have been overprescribing and giving way too many ADHD diagnoses out there. And it is hurting kids, especially boys. And that's where you're seeing the crisis right now. You're seeing it with boys. There has been a war on masculinity, a war on young men, a war on boys for far too long. And I see it. I got 3 young girls, 6 and under. And amazingly, I feel very good about them. They're great. They're progressing well. But when I go into the school and you kind of see what's going on in the school, it's clear that the girls seem to be advancing. And the boys, listen, boys do mature slower than girls. That's been true forever, right? We're knuckleheads for much longer than they are. I don't deny that for a second. But you also have to then sit there and say to yourself, okay, why aren't the boys progressing the way they were a generation or two ago? Because that's happening right now. They're not. And we know that to be the case. 913-4087-957. I tell you, join us on 95.7 FM KCMO on the text line and on the studio line as well. Pete, searching for evidence that supports your claims and ignoring other evidence that supports other theories is called confirmation bias. Yeah, sure, but I'm not saying RFK should be doing that. I don't want him to do that. I hope he just goes into it with a blank slate, lets the doctors do their thing, and then you move on. Because that's the only thing that needs to be happening on this topic and on this issue. 913-408-7957. Tammy's in Shawnee. Go ahead, Tammy. You're on KCMO.
Good morning, Pete. I think you need to get some teachers and some parents in on this topic. I probably disagree with many teachers out there, but I believe that too many children are being, quote, diagnosed with ADHD and given medication. I don't think it's natural. I don't think it's right. And I disagree with it. And I think that's a big problem. So many kids, parents, that's one of the first things that they will tell the teacher is, my son has ADHD or my daughter has ADHD. I just, I don't believe that we have that many kids that have that. I think that, some kids just might have a free spirit. They're just more active. Let's let them be children before we start giving them a label and giving them medicine like it's candy. Let's let them learn through doing. And young children, that's how they learn anyway, is through their experiences and pretending and things like this. They don't need to be sitting in a chair listening for 8 hours. They need to be doing hands-on activities.
Especially boys. Especially boys.
Yes.
They do not need to be sitting in a classroom for 8 hours, not moving. And they don't learn anything anyway. They just don't. I mean, you're spot on, Tammy. Thank you. I mean, it's one of those things. You talk to folks who homeschool, the schoolwork is done in 2 or 3 hours. We have elongated the school day to basically be, and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, but it's basically government-funded daycare so parents can work. The school day does not need to be 8-9 hours. It's insane. Young kids can't be sitting there for that long, especially boys. And if they get jittery, it's like, oh, just put them on some pills. What we are doing on that front is nuts. And the New York Times piece noted on Sunday that most doctors 35 years ago thought, hey, we'd cap this thing at about 2% of kids who have ADHD. It's now pushing 7% who are diagnosed and, getting the meds that they supposedly need. And that is just totally out of whack. And we've screwed the whole thing up. 913-408-7957. Stephen in Johnson County, go ahead. You're on KCMO.
How's it going?
Hey, what's up, brother? How are you?
I can't complain. I just wanted to comment about this lady, the lady that just commented about the kids on the really. I have a nurse that goes to church where I pastor at, and she told me that what they do is, when they don't know what else to do with them, they put them on medicine to keep them calm. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of times unnecessary, and I do agree with exactly what she said.
Thank you for that, my friend. You see it, a lot of it, too, it's sad to say, but it's about what's easiest for the parents. And I'm not saying that in a preachy way. I'm not. Trust me. I've 3 under 6, and some days are a lot better than others. My point is to not, tell anybody what to do with their child. But that was also something highlighted in the New York Times piece, that a lot of this is like parents at their wits' end. They might be older in some cases because that's been a trend. And they're just like, I need help. I can't deal with it. Kid's too crazy. And is that really the best way to go about doing this? RFK announcing yesterday that he will do and have done a study on autism rates that obviously have skyrocketed here over the last generation in particular. So he noted that we now have autism rates of about 1 in 31, and that number is even higher for boys. It is now up to 1 in 20, and it's time to get some answers as to why. It's not political. It shouldn't be. It should just be, hey, I agree. Why would you not want to get some more answers on this? On the text line, 913-408-7957. Pete, I'm 70. I take Adderall. Just got on it a year and a half ago, and it makes a real difference. I don't recommend over-prescribing, but it makes a difference. So I'm not saying it can't be useful in the right situation for the right people. But whether it's the autism rates going up or the ADHD conversation, which came out of a featured piece in the New York Times on Sunday, it's gotten to the point where it's getting way overprescribed. Even the New York Times admitting as much. Pete, this is on the text line. As a father of 6 boys and 7 daughters. Wow, I didn't know Elon Musk was streaming the show from Washington, D.C. Wow, how about that? 13. Oh, wow. They learn different. Most schools push that we learn the same way, which is not correct. That's well said as well. Let's go to Ashley. Good morning, Ashley. You're on KCMO.
Good morning. I have 2 sons. One has ADHD, one has ADHD and autism. A lot of this, your texter that said kids learn differently is exactly right. My younger son that just has ADHD, I don't think he needs to be on medication. Unfortunately, when he was put on medication, I was in a bottle and did not do what I should have done as a mother to protect him. You're from being 8.
You're breaking up on us there, Ashley. I just heard you say that you were in the bottle when your son was put on the medication. Then it cut out.
I'm sorry. Am I now?
Yes, you're good now. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. I'm 2.5 years sober now. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be for my kids. What we need to do is teach these kids how to live without medication, how to handle the feelings that they have without giving them a pill, and how to cope with these things. When my older son moved in with me a year ago, he was on 7 different medications.
How old?
He was 17 at the time. He's 18 now.
Wow.
This is the son with autism and ADHD. He was on, like I said, 7 different medications. He had a lot of problems with his father. I had gotten out of the bottle, got sober. I was a year and a half at that time. He moved in with me full time. We started working on coping mechanisms, on ways to control his emotions, on social behaviors, on things that you have to work with kids with autism. And he is now down to 1 medication for his ADHD only. He is a completely different kid. In some of these cases, we need to look at how we're dealing with them. If my older son does something wrong and you yell at him, he is going to scream back. I'm the exact same way. You can't yell at him. You have to have a conversation with him. And that's where a lot of the problems were coming in. And that's where he was having problems even at school with his teachers. They weren't necessarily yelling at him. They were snapping at him.
Mm-hmm.
If you deal with him and you talk to him like he's a human being, he can hold a conversation. The boy knows more about politics and more about what's going on in our government than I do. He scored a 28 on his ACTs. He is not dumb.
Yeah.
And that's where we have to look at our behaviors also as parents, as educators, and see what we can do to help these kids as well, and not just throw a pill at them. That's how we end up with the addiction issues that we have in this country, myself included. A pill is not going to fix it. We have to teach them how to cope and handle these things on their own.
I am glad that you are so well said, Ashley. I am glad that you are well and back in charge, and great story. Thank you for sharing it. That's well said. I got a minute for you. Dustin, go ahead. You're on KCMO, my man.
Hey, Pete. Good morning.
What's going on?
Oh, not much. Hey, so I've been listening to this whole conversation this morning. It made me think back to listening to my granddad and my great-grandfather through the years. You know, when they were growing up, just like that other caller said, you know, now homeschooling, it's only you cram it all in just a few hours a day, and that's kind of the same way it was back then. You know, they went to school for a few hours, and they got out of school and went home, worked on the farm, whatever. You never really heard of ADHD or anything like that. I have my own son who does have ADHD and autism, and him and my mother, or his mother and myself, we've learned how to kind of work with it and not have to keep him on the medicine as often. And him being in a different school has made a big difference in his grades and everything else as well, because the teachers, like your previous caller just said, you can't yell at them. You got to talk to them because they shut down.
Dustin, thank you. It's so everything you're saying is spot on. It's about the environment. It's about the people in charge around the environment. And I'm glad you brought it up, man. Thank you for the call.